Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. This is the next video in the additional skill RPA developer series. For the people who are coming to the channel for the first time and you haven't already subscribed, please consider subscribing to the channel to get the latest updates. In the additional skill RPA developer series, we are trying to see what additional skill can I have along with my automation skill so that I can perform better in my automation journey. We started with something which is called database, and we have already covered all of these videos in the playlist. We have started by installing the SQL Server. We have seen the basics of databases. We have seen how I can insert, create a table, retrieve the data, delete, drop, truncate. All of this we have seen from a SQL point of view. In case you do not have the SQL already installed on your computer, you can follow this playlist and get the basics sorted. In the last video of the playlist, we have seen how I can connect my SQL Server to UiPath. So I created a table in the SQL Server, and with the help of database activities, we actually connected it to UiPath. This video is going to be continuation of the same, where we are going to explore two activities. One is execute and one is execute non-query, and how do they differentiate and how we can use the same in the database. That is what we are going to explore today, and that would be our agenda. Okay, so let's quickly jump to the SQL Server. So I am into my SSMS and this is my server name. I'll hit connect. I am using the Windows authentication. I'll hit connect. Once we are connected to the SQL Server, as we have created this database, I am in the UiPath database and I have this table which is called dbo.tempdb, right? So this is the tempdb which I have got some data. In order to see what data I have got, I'll simply right click on it and I'll simply say select top 1000 rows. Okay. And as you can see that I have got some name, ID and some amount which I have in this table. So this is some of the sample data which is available in this table. Okay. Now, one thing to notice here is that whenever I do a select, okay, let's say I am doing this statement, right? Just notice this. Whenever we are doing a select statement here in the SQL, select star from DBO temp, you would notice that I am getting the data in the form of a table, which is rows and column, right? If I again do something, let's say select top 3, okay, I am doing something in the top 3, you would notice that I am getting the top 3 record, right? But what happens if I write an update statement, right? So let me just go here and I write an update statement. Update this table, okay, set amount is equal to, let's say 2000, okay, where ID is equal to 123. Okay, so this is an update statement which I am executing. I hope now you guys understand what is update, set and where. In case you don't understand this, please watch the update video and you will understand this, right? So I am instructing the SQL Server here that go to this table and update the amount to 2000 where the ID is 123, right? So I go and execute this, and now you would notice the output which I have got is that how many rows got affected after this update statement, right? And when I execute this, I am getting the result in a form of a data table, right, which is having rows and column. So the idea here is, depending on the type of query you execute on the SQL, you are getting either the data as an output or you get number of rows which are affected. Whenever, let's say, I delete something, it is going to show me that I have got 5 records altered or 5 records deleted. Whenever I insert something, I get to see that, okay, 5 rows affected or we have added 5 records, right? But whenever I do a select, then I am getting something that, okay, this is your result. Now think as a developer, if you are doing an automation and you have to go and execute these two kind of statement, how in UiPath I can actually take care of the results and how we would know when I should use which activity, right? So for that, let me quickly go back to my UiPath studio And this is the connect sequence which we have seen in the previous video, right? So I am not going to repeat that, not spending much time on it. So I'll close this. So I'll go here first thing and I'll create a new sequence. I'll call this sequence as execute query. That is what we are going to explore first. Okay, I'll go here and I hit create. Now before I jump to the execute query, there are some of the prerequisite which I quickly want to recap. The first thing is your automation project should have the UiPath.database.activity pack available. If this dependency is not available, you would not get any database related activities. I have this dependency already added. So if I go to my activities, you would notice inside the app integration database, I am getting all these activities. Okay. I have already shown in the previous video that how you can install this dependency. So if you do not have this, please watch the previous video and that will give you all of this. Okay. Now the first thing, before I go and execute, the first thing is we need to connect my UiPath Studio to the database, right? Because how would my UiPath Studio know that which database should I connect, whose password should I use, what would be the table name and all those details. And all those details we provide in this activity which is called connect to database, right? Now connect to database is a simple activity that will ask us some details such as what is the server name, what is the table and all those details. So I am already connected to this server. So I'll right click on this, go to the properties, right? And here you have something which is called view connection properties. Here you would get all these details which the SQL server will ask you, right? Again, all of this I have explained in detail in the previous video, so not spending much time here. I'll just copy this server name from here. That is what I require. Okay, close this, go back to my UiPath Studio. Click on this guy which is called configure connection, and I'm going to do with the help of connection wizard. Okay, so data source, I am using the SQL server. This gets automatically populated. It is asking me what is a server. This is my server. I'm going to use the Windows authentication. That's it, right? And next, it is asking me which database you want to connect, right? So as you have seen, I am having all these database and I want to use the UiPath database. Okay. To test the connection, we simply use this guy which is called test connection. It is successful. I hit OK, right? This brings me the connection string. Again, the connection string thing already explained in the previous video. Please do watch that video so that you understand how this activity functions. Okay. Now, for those of you who have already watched that video, you would understand that connect to database activity is actually connecting us to the database, and as an output, it will give me a connection. That it is a connection type of object. How I can create an object for connection? Just go here, hit Ctrl+K and create something called db underscore connection, right? So that way I have created the connection with my database and I have seen that it was successful. So with that, I have connected to this database and I am telling UiPath to write the queries on this UiPath, right? So new query. Till this point I have reached, right? Now coming back to the first question, how does UiPath know that what would be the output of the activities, right? So UiPath has got two activities in the database set, right? One is called the run command and the other is called the run query. Okay, there are two things. One is called the run query and the other is called the run command. Okay, when I hover on the run command, you would notice that it is telling me that this guy is actually responsible for update, insert and delete. Meaning whenever I am doing update, insert and delete, it is going to give me that how many numbers were affected. When I click an update statement, 5 rows got inserted, 6 rows got updated, 3 rows got deleted, right? So anything which you do with the update, insert and delete would be done with the help of run command, and the output of this would be a number, an integer, right? So that is the run command. I'm going to explain you all of this in detail. The second activity is called the run query, right? Executes a query on the database. This we have already seen, but again I'll explain it today. So the first one I'm going to take is run query. I drag and drop the run query on the canvas, right? And you would see if I go to the properties, this is nothing but the execute query, right? Some of you might have already worked on the database on when you look for Google or when you look for UiPath forum, right? Most of the people will tell you that please use execute query or use execute non-query, right? I am using the latest version of the database activity. So the name of the activity has changed to run query, right? But the activity is execute query only, right? So do not get confused. Execute query is same as run query. Okay. And we are going to use this activity when we are expecting a data table as an output, right? If you see here, the output is a data table, right? So this would be the simple select statement, right? So for example, this one, I already have it here. So I'll just copy this into the new canvas, blank one, right? So this is a select query. Select star from this table, right? So I am getting a data table. So whenever you are expecting a data table that you would get whenever you are using a select statement, I am going to use this guy, which is execute query, right? So I use execute query, or I would say run query. Again, the same thing in the run query. How does this run query know where should I execute, right? So I have connected to the database. The connection is in the DB connection. This same connection, I'll pass it from here to this guy, go to the run query. In the existing connection, we'll just pass the DB connection, right? So that way it know which SQL server instance I have to connect. The next thing is SQL query, right? So it's a string. So I'll just go here and in the double quotes, I'll pass my query. As simple as that. I'll hit OK. Whatever we are getting in this, the output would be stored in this guy, which is called a data table. I'll hit Control plus K, create a variable called dt underscore data, and this would be now available in the data manager, right? dt data is now available for me. Okay. Now I want to see what is happening in this data table, right? So if you guys remember, in the last time I showed you one more activity which is called output data table. Okay, so I'm not spending much time again here. Output data table simply converts your data table to text. Okay, so I go here. This I'm doing just to validation, right? So dt data properties, the text output, I will just go here and write str underscore text, right? This we have already explored, but the idea is whenever you are expecting a data table, you will use this activity, right? So I'll just quickly use a message box maybe, right? And in the message box, I'll simply print the text. Okay. So if you see this query, select star from UiPath DBO temp, this guy, I am expecting a data table. That is why I have used the run query. Okay, and this run query is nothing but your execute query only, right? So don't get confused. I'll quickly save this, go here, and I say run the file. If everything is working perfectly, what I am expecting, that the connection object would create the connection and the query would be executed, and I would get the complete data, this complete data in a message box, right? That is what we have done, a simple automation. Yeah, and you can see I have got the message box with all the details here. So that completes my execute query, right? So execute query is a statement that would be used when you are expecting the output in a form of a data table. Okay, same like this, you have something which is called execute non-query, right? So for that, I'm going to go here and create a new sequence. I'll call this sequence as execute non-query. Create this, right? I don't want to recreate the connection object, so I'll Control plus C, copy this connect database here, paste it, right? The only thing would be the variable would not be available here, so I'll hit Control plus X, Control K, Control V, right? So execute non-query again would be used whenever I am expecting the count, right? So if I go to the activities and in the database, right, run query is same like execute query, but run command is nothing but your execute non-query, Okay, so I'll drag and drop this activity which is called run command, right? Look wise both the query are exactly the same, but when you click on the properties you would notice that this is execute non-query. Okay, so do not get confused with execute query and execute non-query. Execute query is your run query and execute non-query is your run command. Fine, I hope you got this point. Now the concept is exactly the same. To run the command, where is the connection? So existing connection we have stored here, so that is coming from this variable, right? Again it is asking me, tell me what do you want to execute, right? So this is my complete record, okay, and I'll just copy this update statement here. As you can see, as of now Mukesh has an amount of 2000, right? So if I just update this thing to, let's say, 7000, okay, and I'll put it in a single line so that I can copy paste it here. I have not executed this query, right? So I'll take this update statement. How many records are there with 1 2 3? If you see only 1 2 3, I have a single record. Whenever I am executing this in UiPath in this SSMS, right, I am getting one row affected, right? So I'll again select this, but to validate the record I'll change this 7 to, let's say, now 9000, right? The amount existing is 7000. If this is executed successfully I should get 9000 here, right? But I'll just copy this first, take it to my database activity which is run command, click on this guy which says edit query, right? And you can also do it from here, from the property you would have something which is called the input, and here is the SQL command. Paste it. It is asking me in the form of string, so I'll put everything in double quotes, right? So if we execute this successfully, two things I am expecting in the database. One thing is this number will now get be updated to 9000, and more importantly I am interested in that count, right? How many rows got affected, right? So if you see for the run command, the output is something which is called affected rows, right? It is not a data table. So that is the difference which you get from execute query, right? Execute query have the output. If I again show it here, it was a data table. Out argument was a data table. For non-query, if you see here, it is affected rows and it is in a form of integer variable, right? 10 20 31 2 3 4, right? I simply go here, I hit Control plus K, and I would say that this is my affected underscore rows. Okay, so that variable automatically created. The good part about most of the activities is that if you simply keep your mouse here, it shows you that the result of the execution of the command, whatever command I have given, it can be update, insert and delete. The return value is the number of rows, but if you put any other statement here, that will execute, but the return value would be -1. Okay, let's see that in action first. Okay, so I'll just go here and I would say run the command. And the next thing I want to do here is I want to have let's say a message box. In the message box I want to print that how many rows got affected with this statement, whatever we have written, right? So that was in this variable. I'll hit Control plus S, and if everything is working perfectly, I should get 1 in the message box. I'll save this, go here, and I simply say run the file. Okay, so the automation has started. We'll just wait for the execution to finish. Yeah, it says that the execute non-query has started. Now it would be using this update statement, right? And you can see that I have got 1 as the in the message box, right? So if I hit OK, that was completed. To validate, I can quickly go to my SQL. As you can see, the value is 7000. I'll go here and I say select X star, and the amount is updated to 9000, right? Now that was about update. Okay, what happened if in the query I give something which is not available, right? Let's go to the query here. I say edit the query, and I want to open it in the advanced editor, so I'll go here like this, where ID is, let's say, 12,000. Okay, do I have a record which is having 12,000 here ID? I do not have anything, right? But I'm still telling update this table, set the amount to 9,000 where the ID is 12,000, right? I'll hit OK. Let's save this, go here, and I'd simply say run the file. Okay, let's see what do we get as an output when this automation execute, right? So this time the query itself is wrong, right? There is no record which is having 12,000, right? So if you notice here, I am getting 0 as an output, which means that the affected row were 0. So SQL said that I executed this query, but I could not found anything, so that's why 0 rows are affected. Why that is coming? Because if you do the same thing here as well, I do not have this 1 2 2 3 something. If I go and execute this, 0 rows affected, right? So this same 0 is returned you by that activity also, right? So that means that if your query does not result anything, you would get 0. If your query result anything, you would get the exact count, right? So it is applicable not only to update but to delete and insert as well. So let's try to delete something, right? So I'll just change this update to this guy, which is called delete from this table, and let's try to delete 2 records. Okay, so where ID in 123, 455. Okay, if I execute this statement, what should happen? It would actually go and delete 2 records from here, right? So now again the same thing, if you don't understand how it is a delete and where and all this work, we have already explained this in the previous videos, so please watch those videos to get clarity. Okay, so I'll again take this delete statement from here, take it to my UiPath. In the run command, go to the properties, right? I'll click on edit, and this time I am deleting 2 records. Okay, so the expectation is once I execute this, I'll again minimize, I should get 2 in the message box, right? That how many rows are affected. Okay, so again we are just waiting for this automation to complete. Yeah, and you can see in the message box I have got 2 as an output, right? But still I can see this one here. So to validate, I'll quickly go to my this one, I'll say execute, and you could see that 2 records got removed. That is why the message box was showing 2, right? So that is the difference between an execute query and the execute non-query, right? Now one question you might be having, what happens if I just put some select statement here, right? Let's try to do that, right? So this is my select statement. When I execute this, I'm getting a data table. I'll copy this select statement, copy this, go here in this run command, go to the properties, in the SQL, paste it, select star from UiPath dot this table. I'll hit OK. Now let's see what happens. If I go here and I say run the file, same automation, I have only changed the query, but now this time I know that the output was a data table, but I have used the run command. So if you see here, I am getting the output as -1. Why I am getting -1? Because if you remember, run command previously told me that in this affected rows, for all the other type of statement, the return value is -1. Okay, so that is why it is giving me -1, right? So that was the difference between execute query and execute non-query. Okay, so that is what pretty much I wanted to cover in this tutorial, that what is the difference between execute query and execute non-query, right? I hope you guys understood. Let's have a quick recap. The execute query, as we have seen, is executing a query on the database and results in a data table, right? Whereas an execute non-query is mostly returning you an integer variable and used for update, insert and delete. We have seen that we always can execute any other kind of statement, but the return value is -1, right? And the other common properties are the same, right? Continue an error, display name, timeout, and all those bits, right? So in the UiPath documentation, still you would see the execute query and execute non-query. Don't get confused. The queries are the same and they are available in the activity panel with this name. Okay, so this is your execute query and this is your execute non-query, right? You can always refer to the UiPath documentation to get the more details around the activities. And in case if you have any more question, feel free to drop me a note on the email ID or you can just drop it in the comments. With this, I would like to wrap this video here. I would really appreciate your feedback on this video, that how was the video, do you find it helpful, and what is the next you want to learn, right? Having said that, thank you for watching. If you like this video, please do subscribe to the channel and happy automation.